And that brings us to the analysis of Shields and Brooks. That is syndicated columnist Mark Shields and New York Times columnist David Brooks. Hello to both of you. So, David, let's look at what we just heard from these voters in Andy Kim's district in New Jersey. You could say they're all over the map, but it's interesting. Yes, it's a divided district. These voters really are divided.
Yeah, and I think impeachment is just this big, massive interruption in our process of government to the extent that we have one. And that usually is accompanied by a cultural land swell where people are talking about the issue of impeachment, where it's on the front page and the Watergate is breaking story. The Washington Post and the New York Times are breaking stories. And as far as I can tell, the Russia investigation has drifted to the back of a lot of people's minds. And so there's a core that still wants to do it. And there are over half the Democratic caucus want at least an inquiry into impeachment. But I just don't feel the groundswell. And I do think that sense that let's have this campaign, let's get to the issues, is just going to make this impeachment thing peter out.
Mark, what do you make of real people's reaction?
I thought Betty Wilson, the voter in Burlington, had the best summation. I want to get rid of them, but let's just get on with the election, basically. And I think that's the prevailing attitude now. There's any question, I don't question the intensity, the sincerity, the conviction of those who seek the impeachment, but I think the practicality of that course has been disproved, and I think Speaker Pelosi has made her position pretty clear on it.
But you do have, I mean, David, you said it, you've now got more than half. You've got a majority of the Democrats who've now come out and said we should move ahead with an impeachment inquiry. You've got some key committee chairs. You got Jerry Nadler, chairman of the Judiciary Committee. So what happens?
Yeah, to some degree, well, there's sort of the hardcore that wants to do this. Then some people are saying, I'm for the inquiry, but I'm not sure I'm for impeachment, which gives you able to play both sides. And then Pelosi's position has always been when the public case has been made for it, and unless there's a groundswell, I don't think she would go ahead and say the public case has been made for it. And the risks of doing it are reasonably high. We've seen that against the Clinton impeachment, that backlashes tend to happen, and that might happen in this case.
Risks? I mean,
sure. I mean, the steam went out of it, Judy. I mean, it is not a matter of a topic of common discussion in the country. It's not at the top of any talk show list. It just isn't. I mean, there's an intensity, obviously, on the part of some Democratic partisans, but it's in no way a majority position in the country, or it hasn't changed. It's not a growing position. Bob Mueller's testimony came, and it went, and it left in its wake no movement for impeachment. I think that's fair to say.
Well,
and plus we're on the cusp of going to Iowa. I mean, so there's an election.
Voting.
I mean,
Yeah. Well, let's talk for a moment about President Trump coming off, David, the G7 meeting of world leaders last week. And I think it's fair to say this has been a tumultuous week for the president. His position on trade with China was in one place and then another and yet another. We were hearing something different almost every day. You look back on the G7, again, the meeting in France last weekend, and it was more characterized by tension that he had with other world leaders than by any sense that anything was getting done.
Yeah,
so
that's just sort of part of the course for G7 summits. But I think what struck me this week was how the debate changed around Donald Trump. There's been whispering, is he mentally not as fit as he was? Are impairments rising? That somehow seemed to rise and now become public conversation. When he said his father was born in Germany, when your father was born in the Bronx, that's not something you normally get wrong. That his wife is good friends with the North Korean leader when she'd never met him. I mean, there are just a lot of things coming out of his mouth, and this has always been a case. But the verbal patterns, psychiatrists are not allowed to judge people they haven't met. But there are certainly a lot of people out there raising a lot of red flags. So that, to me, among the tumult of the political tumult of the G7, the psychological tumult is almost one of the key takeaways.
you think we're in a different place with regard to all that?
I don't know, Judy. I mean, I think there's a fatigue about Donald Trump. I think there's a what's he going to do next attitude, and that what is the capacity for outrage as we reach those limits. As far as the G7 summit, that hit me about it was I can't get over how he continues to denigrate President Obama. I mean, that just, it's gratuitous. And I had explained to me by a longtime Trump watcher who said Trump knows that at that G7 meeting they'd rather have Obama than rather have him. And so he's almost driven to make up stories about President Obama. That President Obama gave away Crimea to Putin. It's sort of fabricated, that to me is bizarre. But the other thing about it is, and Adlai Stevenson once said, "Better we lose an election than mislead the American people." Donald Trump lies when he doesn't have to. I mean, on the meeting of the G7 on the environment, and he skipped it. And he said, well, the reason he wasn't there was that he was meeting with Mrs. Merkel and the Prime Minister of India, both of whom were at the meeting. I mean, so it's just saying things that are so easily corrected and so easily prove that he's lying. And at some point, I would just think the burden of working for someone like that becomes unbearable, just unbearable. He lies to you as a loyal staffer. He lies to the people he's dealing with. At some level in politics, your word is the coin of the realm. And he's overdrawn on that bank account.
Well, I don't want to draw too close a comparison here, but David, this week there was attention to Joe Biden because he's been telling a story about meetings he had with U.S. American veterans who were fighting in Iraq or Afghanistan, and telling a very emotional, compelling stories about pinning a medal on them, or, and how one was, retrieved a buddy from a burning vehicle and another one rappelled down a cliff and so forth. But it turns out these are
Yeah.
different things that happen jumbled together with some, frankly, inaccurate pieces.
Yeah.
There's been, some are saying this should be connected and compared to the president, others saying in no way.
Oh, I think in no way. I mean, Biden may be aging, and maybe that's an issue. I think it's a legitimate issue for voters to think about. But he's not mendacious. He's not irresponsible. He may embellish a story to improve its dramatic effect. And he may be forgetting things. Our memories are just much more fallible than we think. Every memory expert will tell you that. And when you're on the campaign trail doing thousands of events, traveling everywhere, things get jostled in your mind. So it could be just the normal jostling of campaign, and for some reason we've gotten into a pattern where Biden gaffe is the story. So he'll do 8 good things in the campaign, tells one mistake, and that's the story, because that's the story we associate with Joe Biden right now. But it's something for voters to monitor. I don't think embellishing that kind of story is like something that's necessarily a sign that he's over the hill.
And Biden's campaign, Mark, is saying the press is making too much of this.
Yeah, the Biden campaign ought to shut up. I mean, they really do. The last thing in the world you want to do as a campaign is tell voters what matters. Right now, it doesn't matter to voters. I mean, we went through a campaign in 1980 where the President of the United States running for re-election, got 49 electoral votes and carried 6 states. Jimmy Carter against Ronald Reagan, a man who said that the trees caused more pollution than automobiles. A man who said there was more oil under Alaska than there was in Saudi Arabia. A man who said that maybe Darwinism, we ought to teach creationism as well. I mean, but there was no malice with Ronald Reagan, and voters saw that. They said, yes, he said things that weren't totally factually true, but it wasn't mendacious, as they used David's word, and it was an attempt to aggrandize him. All of Donald Trump's lies are to put him in a better light. Joe embellishes, Joe embroiders, and I think it can be a proxy for age when he starts doing that. And I think that they have to be worried about that. But I don't think the two are comparable at this point, either morally or politically.
It is noticeable with voters that people will forgive you for getting the facts wrong if you get your basic narrative right.
Yeah.
That if basically the America you see is the American voters recognize that's what they care about.
Meantime, we know that Biden is going to be, and we've got a picture of the 10 Democrats who have made the next debate stage. That means 10 others didn't make the debate stage. This was Democratic Party rules, David, that said you had to have 130,000 people giving you money, and you had to be at 2% in several polls. Some of the candidates who didn't make the cut are saying these rules aren't fair. What do you think?
Yeah, I think they're fair. Getting to 2% is not like it's not like the British invasion, the Beatles landing at Shea Stadium. I mean, it's 2%. If you're out there campaigning with all your might and you can't get 2%, to me, something's not working.
But their point is we're still 5 months away from people voting.
Yeah,
And
but the reality is, at some point, the voters can't really entertain 22 people up there, or 20 people over 2 nights. And so there has to be a winning process. This seems to me a pretty effective one. I was surprised so many made the last round, frankly. I thought they were set the standards too low. So now we can take a look at, frankly, the people who are plausibly likely to be the nominee and take a more closer look. And I think that serves the party, and I think it serves the voters.
what do you think about these debate rules?
I think the debate rules are a direct consequence of 2016, when the Democratic National Committee and Party favored Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders unfairly. They were promulgated. They were there. Everybody knew about them going in. We could argue with them whether they're fair, whether 2% this early is fair. But everybody knew what the rules they were playing by. So I think in that sense, the party is doing better than it did 4 years ago. The problem is that some of the more electable Democrats, in my mind, are off the stage. I mean, whether it's Senator Bennett, Governor Bullock, are not going to be there. So their campaigns then have to make that decision. What do I do? They've got to do something dramatic and bold to reassert themselves into the debate, and that becomes a problem. But
I wouldn't think it's a death sentence for them, because you look at how much movement there's been. Warren was down in the dumps, and now she's surging.
Right.
Buttigieg was up, now he's down a little. I'm really struck by how voters are really moving around.
But I just think the coverage is going to go to the 10.
For sure.
I mean, and that's going to be the
Going to go to the
predilection.
10 who run the debate.
And the news directors are going to say, well, you know, and so you have to do something if you're Senator Bennett or Governor Bullock or the others who aren't there to break through that coverage.
It is pointed out for the October debate, the rules are going to stay the same. So some of them who didn't qualify this time may be able to qualify the next time, maybe over 2 nights. But David, only in just in a few seconds that we have left, we are starting to see the shape of the race. I mean, all the candidates on stage are people were, I guess somebody pointed out, Andrew Yang is the only non-politician on the stage.
Yeah, I mean, he's run a real vital campaign.
Yes.
And then Warren, I think, is the story. She's slow, steady growth based on fundamentals, based on strength, frankly, based on likability. If Democrats pick any candidate that's their magic ticket, they like her. She's taken 45,000 selfies. That's a lot of hard work. So I think her move is right now the story of the moment.
We're going to leave it there. David Brooks, Mark Shields, thank you both.
Judy.